Hello, welcome to Lazada Insider, featuring knowledge that makes a difference. We share trusted insights, forward-looking perspectives, and exclusive expert interviews to keep you ahead of the curve.
Hi, I'm your host, Katrina, and welcome to Lazada Insider. Today's topic is actually very close to my heart. When I regularly check in and talk with women sellers on Lazada, I heard many inspiring stories on how they leverage on e-commerce to become self-employed, to become business leaders and entrepreneurs. And I think at the broader level, when we look at the whole e-commerce ecosystem, e-commerce not only opens up new opportunities for women, but also it represents an opportunity to further position women very well to compete in online space. My guest today, Alexa, from International Finance Corporation, is absolutely an expert on the topic of gender equality. She certainly shares the same passion as I do on this topic. And today we're going to discuss about the status of women in e-commerce in this region and what opportunities lie ahead of them. Alexa is a disruptive technology lead at IFC, and she leads a team focusing on initiatives that use technology to close the gender gaps in emerging markets. She also served as a high-level appointee to the board of ITU Generation Connect. Hello, Alexa. It's great to have you.
Good afternoon, Kat. Thank you for having me.
How about let's start with letting our audience know more about you first.
Of course. Well, my name is Alexa, and I'm the Disruptive Tech Lead for the International Finance Corporation, which supports the private sector in emerging markets. My team works with tech companies around the world to make sure that women and other underserved groups can access and benefit from emerging technologies. For our new research, we were able to partner with Lazada to use platform data to publish the first ever report on women and e-commerce in Southeast Asia.
Excellent. As you mentioned, this report that your team is leading together with, Lazada, Kantar, European Commission, really has very insightful research insights. And as you mentioned, it's the first ever large-scale piece of research focusing on women e-commerce in this region in Southeast Asia. And this piece of research certainly shed a lot of light on the status of how women are currently engaging in e-commerce. Let's talk about some of the interesting insights from this research first. When we compare female and male sellers, do they turn to e-commerce for the same reason?
Well, what we found, Kat, is that women and men come to e-commerce with different motivations because they have different experiences offline. Women are active entrepreneurs, but they are more likely to own smaller businesses with fewer employees. That means we see women coming to e-commerce to grow. They are more likely than men to already have a business running, but to really want to be able to find new customers, new markets, or just to sell more efficiently. For instance, we found women are more likely than men to start out using social media, so for example, chat apps, but may need support to open a formal online shop where they can reach bigger and greater groups. That means e-commerce platforms are in a unique position to help women entrepreneurs make their ambitions a reality. And there's certainly a business case, as well as a moral case for platforms to do so. Our research found that over $280 billion could be added to the e-commerce market in Southeast Asia by 2030 if gaps between men and women vendors were closed. Of course, that's billions more dollars in the hands of women entrepreneurs.
That's certainly a very big size of prize when we talk about empowering women to grow in e-commerce. So are there any differences when it comes to what they require to grow and to scale their online business?
Well, I would say that the types of support entrepreneurs need are universal, but women can benefit disproportionately from access to finance and access to training. For instance, women are more likely to face challenges in getting funds to grow and scale their businesses. In Indonesia alone, IFC found that women SME owners face an unmet financing need of over $6 billion. Women also benefit from skills development. Women we surveyed were more likely than men to say they used online training through platforms like Lazada University as well as to have a demand for more and greater training. Right now, a lot of the trainings available online focus on kind of the nuts and bolts of how to use the platform. But there's a real opportunity here to expand offerings. For example, to have mini MBAs that can help women thrive online.
So do you see that the pandemic actually plays a role there? How does it affect women versus men sellers differently?
Yeah, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a major blow to women entrepreneurs everywhere in the world. The World Economic Forum found that it added over 35 years to the time that we're going to need to achieve gender equality. Southeast Asia was definitely no exception. We found that women during the course of the pandemic went from outperforming men in terms of sales to actually just having about 85% of men's sales on average. So at face value, of course, it's a very pessimistic story, but I prefer to take a more optimistic view. Women were performing well before the pandemic, which means we can definitely get back there. That also means that, that $280 billion figure that I mentioned is absolutely a realistic and achievable goal for us.
Excellent. Do you see any differences between the countries that you were doing the research on, which is Indonesia and Philippines?
Absolutely. Every country we looked at in Southeast Asia and globally tells a different story. In general, we found the Philippines had a higher share of women entrepreneurs who faced lower challenges, particularly in terms of access to finance. This tells us that the environment outside the platform is a hugely important factor for women entrepreneurs. Addressing big picture challenges like digital inclusion, so more women can actually get online to compete, will translate to bigger success for women in e-commerce.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that, the pandemic actually carried bigger implications for women sellers versus men. It is a result of a combination like the factors you mentioned, whether they're able to get financial support, and possibly, given the pandemic situation we're in, there is increased need for them to care for the family as well. But you also mentioned that, with challenges comes opportunities, given that they were doing very well before the pandemic. So what do you think are the opportunities for women in e-commerce?
Yeah, you're spot on with in terms of your point around family care. We tend to talk about the challenges for women entrepreneurs, but the reality is that e-commerce and digital commerce is overwhelmingly a positive story. It's helping women to compete in the digital economy on an equal basis with men. For instance, to your point on childcare, women do face bigger challenges in terms of caring for their families. And that was one of the big reasons that women's businesses shut during COVID. However, women told us in our research that they actually started selling online in many cases because it allowed them to make money on their own terms and really still be there for their families. And that's certainly not the only benefit we're seeing. One of the biggest opportunities is access to new and bigger markets. Sometimes that can mean kind of bigger groups of customers, being able to sell to an entire country rather than, just your personal network. But often it can also mean going into new sectors like electronics, where women might be historically underrepresented. Last but not least, financing. Women were more likely to say that Lazada's platform financing benefited their business in the last year. And done right, fintech can mean that the sales histories that women produce online are all that they need to go to a bank or a fintech provider and get the financing they need to grow their business. This is definitely a big opportunity and one that we've only just begun to see the start of.
Thank you for sharing the opportunities. Actually, many of our audience out there are women sellers, or they're aspired to join e-commerce. So, what would be your advice to them? How can they best capture the opportunities and breaking through the hurdles faced?
Well, I would say two things, Kat. First, one of our interesting findings is that when we looked at men and women's comfort level using the platform, women were just as comfortable selling online, but they still wanted more skill sets and wanted to learn more. That means for the women entrepreneurs out there listening to this, you probably already know more than you think you do and are already kind of ready to really kind of take on the industry. Second, I would say that this is an industry that's really just starting to grow. Get in now, even if not everything is ready, even if it's not perfect, you can still grow your business as the industry itself continues to expand.
I think I'm very happy that we actually dedicate this episode centering women e-commerce in our discussion. And that is the very important first step that we should take. And I hope that what we discussed today can encourage more women to come onto e-commerce and achieve success. And what you shared also helps players in the e-commerce industry to clearly see where the opportunity lies, to better support, to better empower the women sellers. And if you would like to know more, please head to the IFC website and you can find the full report of women and e-commerce in Southeast Asia there. Excellent sharing, Alexa. It was great discussing with you.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
This is Lazada Insider. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you click follow and subscribe so you don't miss our latest insights and expert interviews. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Lazada.